Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. And yes, I've managed to crawl out of my sickbed, across the hallway and into the studio. There are far too many stories that need to be addressed. And also, I'm feeling a bit better than I felt yesterday. I was just rough yesterday. Could not do anything. So, hey, I'm here, I'm back. And we will get on with many stories today. There are a lot, and there's wide and diverse, all sorts of topics. But we're going to start with tax, because already, of course, Scotland is the highest taxed part of Britain. And it will get worse, with more taxes being announced and more expenses going on to just about every aspect of life. The tax rates, both income tax and other things that you're paying, the tax on shopping, for example, everything will just make you a little bit poorer, a little bit more miserable. On top of that, Jeremy Hunt is likely to either reduce the rate of income tax in England or, at the very least, increase the allowances. This is not something that's going to be followed in Scotland. And so that differential in taxes is going to increase. And I've got a story lined up for later on, which is showing that there is already a noticeable effect of having these increased taxes. And so this will just make matters worse. Humza Yousaf is saying he will not be cutting taxes even if Jeremy Hunt does. Let's have a look at the story. So struggling Scots face further tax doom as Humza Yousaf will refuse to follow Jeremy Hunt in cutting tax. The First Minister confirmed that he would not follow the Chancellor if he chose to cut income tax for those living in England and Wales, meaning a further growing tax divide between north and south of the border. And as I say, I've got another story coming up later which will highlight some problems that are being shown with regards to that. And there he is, look, sitting there pretending that he can read. Struggling Scots will face further tax doom as Humza Yousaf indicated that he will refuse to follow Jeremy Hunt in cutting the taxes if the Chancellor chooses to do so in his spring budget. It's been reported that Mr Hunt will look to use his fiscal headroom to slash income tax for those in England and Wales. Middle and high earners north of the border will be forced to pay more tax to the state from April if Holyrood passes Shona Robinson's Tax and Acts budget, described as the worst budget ever presented to the Scottish Parliament. It adds an extra tax band to anyone taking home more than $75,000, and fiscal drag will force the likes of teachers and police officers into a higher tax band. Everyone pays more at the same time as they're cutting services. So the most vulnerable in society are being harmed the most, and everybody is paying an extra bit of money for the privilege. Oh boy, how bad can it get? But this, of course, is what happens. The tax gap is already wide between England and Scotland, with those who earn more than $28,850 paying more into the public purse than anywhere else in the rest of the UK. And it will increase even further later on this year, and with a glaring difference if Mr Hunt decides to cut income tax, which of course he's looking at. The Tories need to do something. If there's going to be an election, they'll need to get the income tax down, have people a bit more money in their pocket, feeling a bit better, that kind of thing. And of course, this is going to make a very big difference. And it will drive people out. It will drive senior people out. The most mobile, indeed, those who've got the capital to go, will. This is undoubtedly what is going to happen. Anyway, a 2p cut in income tax would cost $13 billion a year, and it would likely eat up any fiscal headroom. The Tories are under pressure to deliver tax cuts ahead of the next general election. In Scotland, Miss Robinson's new tax band is the sixth to be introduced, compared to just 3 in England, and will affect 114,000 workers, forcing them to pay more to the state. Although many of them won't, of course. They will take measures. They will become tax efficient. They won't do overtime. They'll put more in the pension. Or they may just move south of the border. If there are income tax cuts in England, it would result in more cash for the SNP executive, which will likely be spent elsewhere. Speaking after his highly criticised speech about his plans for the economy in an independent Scotland, the First Minister refused to follow suit. He says, "We're not looking at revising our income tax plans. No, because tax is all you've got. It's all you can do. You've made such an absolute pig's ear of the economy in every single field that you've got to tax your way to, to clear all this debt. But you cannot tax yourself. You cannot tax the country to become rich. It doesn't work like that. And of course, people aren't stupid, and people will change their behaviours. They will become efficient. They will move their money. They will do anything they can to avoid paying this pernicious tax. And of course, I've mentioned before, it could even end up with actually a lower tax take. So even less money going into the coffers than before. Of course, Shona Robinson won't understand how that works because she's really not clever enough to see it. That's the problem. Of course, they don't have any idea of what's coming down the line. They're too stupid to see the consequences of their actions. Anyway, he said, of course, if anyone wants to revise those plans, they need to tell us where we take the money from, what vital services, be it NHS, education, Police Scotland and the Fire Service. Here's the thing. He's talking about, if we do this, we've got to take the money from these services. And he's named 4 there. NHS, Education, Police and Fire. All 4 have got cuts under the SNP. Now, he'll tell you you're putting more money in. Yes, you are. But you're not putting more money in at the rate of inflation. And therefore, it's a real terms cut. There's no getting away from that. So he's actually already cutting those services, and he's saying, but otherwise we're going to cut even further. Well, it's funny that you should say that. We've got a story. The very, very next story is an example of where money can be cut, and yet strangely it isn't. So keep an eye out for the very next story. Anyway, he blamed Westminster for him hiking up income taxes in Scotland as he called its autumn budget disastrous. He said it meant real-term spending cuts for our public services. Well, you're making the choice to cut them. No one else is. They don't need to be real terms cuts. You are making that decision. The SNP still needs to get its budget passed through Hollywood, and it is likely to do this thanks to the Scottish Greens. Although there are increasing numbers of people within the SNP that don't like this budget. And it makes you wonder if, for example, Kate Forbes and her group would bounce this budget. They can't vote against it. They'd lose the whip, but they can abstain. That's allowable. And if they abstain, then, and her group abstain, then there could be enough that the opposition could vote it down. The moment it gets voted down, it would require heads to roll. Shona Robinson would have to go, and probably Humza Yousaf would have to resign. So there is the possibility that Kate Forbes and her group abstain from the vote and allow the opposition to vote it down. That could happen. That would be interesting to see. Anyway, Mr Hunt's statement on March the 6th would mean additional money for the Scottish Government to spend how it wants, and we previously told how Mr Yousaf used his speech on Monday to claim that an independent Scotland is needed to get away from the poor man of Europe, which he accused the UK of being. Well, if Scotland's the poor man of Europe, it's because of the policies over the last 17 years of the SNP. They have destroyed every single sector in the Scottish economy by interference, by basically putting controls in. They want licensing. They want their finger in every pie. It is a protection racket by a mafia-like organisation, and that was why everything is falling apart. We've seen how one house builder's already gone. It won't be the last. House building in Scotland is collapsing because of all the strains that they're putting onto the industry. Tourism collapsing. Short-term lets collapsing. Rental properties, long-term rental properties collapsing. Everything is breaking down. Anyway, he said he did admit that Skexit would not be the rivers of milk and honey. But according to him, everyone's going to be £10,000 better off. So perhaps he's lying. Who knows? He's certainly incapable of telling the truth, isn't he? Anyway, is he confirmed that the country would still face pressing challenges? The biggest one, of course, being the SNP being in power. That's the worst thing for Scotland. He refused to say what these would be. Well, I've just told you. And he also claimed that his party would not hike up taxes further and cut public spending in the event of a yes vote. Well, he would have to increase taxes because all the things that you need as an independent country, which would not be paid for by Westminster, would have to be paid for by Scotland. Taxes going up is the first inevitable thing that would happen in independence. So people of Scotland rejoice in the fact that you're never going to get independence under an SNP one-party Marxist state. I'm coming up. I think the conclusion we have is that Humza Yousaf and the SNP generally are untrustworthy and inept. We've known this for a long time. There's nothing new and surprising. They're just finding new and better ways of proving it, of course. And, saying that he's not going to cut taxes in Scotland if Jeremy Hunt cuts taxes in England is just an example of how out of touch he is and how lacking in the understanding of the economy and how people will react to these things that they truly are. People will leave. Things will happen. Everything will change. And the tax take is likely to fall to lower than what it is now. And then you'll have a 2 billion or a 3 billion or a 5 billion pound hole in the economy. Goes to show these charlatans have not got a clue, have they? Anyway, I shall finish there. Thank you very much for watching. I hope as the day goes on I get better and my delivery improves. I can tell that I'm ill, and I think you possibly can too. But I hope things will get better. I've just taken a couple of Nurofen, so hopefully the headache will disappear. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Do please continue. As I say, watch the next video. It links in here ever so nicely. And then there's one other one later on, which again will link into this one. I don't just throw these things together, I do plan them out. Anyway, take care, stay safe, and I will speak to you later. Bye.